Hello, everybody. Welcome to another deep dive. Today, I'm here with Mr. ChrisTFer, Space Station Gaming head coach, ex-London Spitfire head coach, the mastermind behind the team, I'd say,
Yeah.
from the Overwatch League. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm okay, mate. How are you?
I'm chilling. I'm actually just waking up. I only got like 5 hours sleep because we had a 3 hour long Magic the Gathering game yesterday night, and it killed me. But
Yeah.
I'm vibing, bro. Yeah, I wanted to know if you recognize what was said here. So this was August 23rd, 2016. I feel sorry for the owner of Endpoint. He doesn't deserve his organization's reputation to be hurt because his players cherish their egos. Can you
Ah,
remember what that was about? Any
I mean,
context on
this is
that?
like, the thing is, it's like do you know the bell curve meme where it's like the low,
Yeah.
I don't know, the low IQ person who says something, and then the people in the middle say something, and then once you get to the high IQ, it's kind of like that for me in my career, where I started off being like the world's biggest shit talker in like UK like local leagues, and then I spent the majority of my career just being nice, and now I'm like the other end of it, and I'm just like a massive shit talker again, you know. And it's like this like cycle. I think we were playing. I think there was a guy. I think he was called like Uki, like Luke, who was
Ayuki,
like a
yeah.
big. Yeah, he was like a big player. I think he was on that team right there, and he was my arch nemesis from day one. I mean, I had like 27 arch nemesis now, like throughout the years. But he was it. I think he works for FaZe Clan now, so he also like made it somewhere in the scene. But yeah, like I think we beat them on LAN, and like that was like our modern day Ents rivalry was like we were like GLB esports or something, and we were just like playing the like UK Go for tournaments and stuff. Me and Chips are on the same team. And actually, do
Yes.
you know who Orcs is? He actually casts LCK now. He's like professional
Yep.
League of Legends caster. He was on our team, so that was like a
He
real.
he played Lucio,
He was,
right? I remember
yeah,
that.
he was our Zarya player for a while, and I think he was our Lucio player, and then he moved and became a professional LCS
Yeah.
caster. So it's like a full thing.
A full transition, yeah, because he used to play. I casted Orcs when he was playing. Was he AD? Was he AD carry or was he a support
He was always
player?
a support player because I also
Support
used to
player,
play
that
on.
was it. Yeah.
I went to school with him, so we were in high school together. And we played on the same League of Legends team because we were both Challenger back then. And then
Hmm.
we both got into Overwatch at the same time. But obviously, like I kind of stuck with it, and he went back to League.
Back to his
Hard
wheelhouse.
to say who won in the end, who
Yeah,
made the better decision.
I actually have a screenshot here of your team called Announce Us with Orcs, Billy, Chipser, you, Dario,
Darius,
Drio,
legend.
and Tazak. That was for
Oh
the
my God,
the Announce Us
what a
team back
god
in
squad, dude!
2016. Yeah, you
That
and
was the time
Chipser,
when
legends.
you would play Rhine and you would play three Cassidys, and what you would do is you would stun over the Rhine shield, and then you would just chain stun him till he died. And like that was like the state of Overwatch back then. That was our like 3-2-1, stun two, stun three, and I had to like get really good at like moving the shield up, you know.
That's messed up. That like, and
I mean,
people say they
dude, like
want no roll lock or
ah,
anything, bro. Come on now.
insane. And you would play. We had a strategy on Lijiang where there would be two Lucios and four Tracers, and you would just play to infinite stall from, and it would just be like
Oh
both teams
my.
would have four Tracers, and that was like the meta strategy for a time.
That sounds like hell. Like actual, like looking back at it now, comparing to the game, like modern
I mean,
day,
for sure, like
bro.
for sure. I mean, there's
The
all these, you have all these conversations about 5v5, 6v6, hit, roll lock, all of this. We don't need to get into them, but I think if you don't actually agree that the game's been on a pretty solid upward trajectory, then I don't know. I don't know what to say to you.
nostalgia is a powerful drug, and
It
I was
really
definitely
is.
happier 5 years ago. Me in 10 years, I was happier 5 years ago. Me in another 5 years, I was definitely happier. And then yeah, you realize that actually you were probably about the same. You're probably just vibing and chilling as you were now as you were
Yeah.
back then. Like you
I
only
mean, I
remember the
think
good times.
people are so naive, like this idea that, oh yeah, the game 6 years ago when it was first new, you should just keep the game like that. It was so good back then. No, it was just new to you. You were just getting unlimited dopamine hits from this new game.
Yeah.
Did you ever play COD Modern Warfare 2?
Yeah, of
Or
course. Yeah.
you
That
okay,
game
you
was
remember how
dog. Like thinking about it
but it was
now.
so fun,
Exactly.
right? Like
Exactly.
Noob Tube's one man army, all these claymores, like all of these, like every. Like, do you remember the double models where you could do that and you could flip it
Yep.
around?
Model 1887s, and they didn't patch it for like a year or like 8
Yeah.
months, and they were like the bullets perfectly were in the center of the crosshair, despite the crosshair being the size of your screen. Yep. Lightweight Marathon Pro, Commando Pro, infinite running with a tack knife on a pistol, and you just lunge at people across the map. Like,
Yeah. But I love that game, and I spent every single second of my life possibly doing it.
Yep.
But if that COD released like in that state now, it would be awful. You know what I mean?
People would lose their minds. But like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Where's the balance in this? Where's the? And it's like,
Yeah,
well,
that's it. But that's it. It's just like it's pure nostalgia at all it is. People can't separate like, oh, I felt good. But if the game was in like Overwatch 1, like release state now, no one would play this game, you know? It'd be really, really boring, I think.
yeah, oh, 100%. When they do release those modes too, people jump in. It's like, I think people realize slowly that, oh, like even
Yeah.
open queue, to be fair, it's like, oh, I don't think this game is that balanced when they can have 4 tanks and an Ana or 4 tanks and a Moira.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that's fun, honestly. That's why they balanced a few months ago with the tank changes for open queue specifically, so their health pools weren't as giant.
Yeah, it makes
like,
sense. Yeah,
It's
makes sense.
so silly. Were you always a console gamer then back then, or like were you classic UK boy and console into PC and then?
Yeah,
went from there?
I think my generation was all Xbox 360 and PS3.
Yeah.
I think when like party chat and stuff first came out, it was like the most like unbelievable technological advance because you could sit and you could play and talk to your friends, right? And I was the same as everyone, like FIFA once a year, COD once a year for like 7 years of my life. And then I started to play League of Legends on like a really old laptop, like it was the most horrendous setup ever, and I got really into it. And then so I actually there's like this. Do you know what matched betting is?
Yeah, sure. No, wait.
Okay.
Match betting or matched?
Matched.
No, I
Match
don't.
betting. Okay, so it's like a get rich quick scheme, right? So it okay, and this
Okay.
is actually one of like this is genuinely one of the founding tenets of my beliefs why I don't trust anyone or anything. I just do my own thing. Because it was like a YouTube advert and it says, "Do you want to beat the bookies doing matched betting? You can win risk-free money gambling." And you know what you meant to do is you meant to click off it, right? But
Yeah.
I sat and watched it, and the maths checked out, and I was like, "Wow, okay, there's actually something here. Like, it actually makes sense. Like, I can understand the concept behind it." And without getting everyone in your chat addicted to it, the idea is that if you just bet on 2 separate websites, but on one of the websites they're using their free offer, you effectively can't lose, no matter who wins. You're right, because you just win a little bit if you do the right. So, like,
Right.
And I thought, you know what? Even though this is a YouTube advert for something telling me I can beat the bookies, I feel like I trust the maths. And I did it, right? And I got my credit card and I put all this stuff. And I made like £2,000 doing this, like every day in like less than a month. And then I bought my first gaming PC. So that's when I started to play League of Legends. So my entire career was actually only started from that decision because I wouldn't have been able to afford a gaming PC otherwise. I would have had to wait ages to get one. So that YouTube advert where it was some guy saying, "You can beat the bookies," that's where it all started for me.
There's no way. That is
Deadly serious.
Insane. That is surely that is just like a flaw in like not old school internet, but like older betting websites. Because there's no way you can do that now. Surely.
Yeah, you can because you can only win like $50 from each. Because you only get like you sign up and they give you £50 free bet, right? They do that even now. And I go into a different website and I put £50. If I bet on Man United to win and Man United to lose or draw, then whatever happens, I'm going to make like £20. But I only get Paddy Power's offer once and it's region locked, right? I can't do it again. So you just go through every single list. You can do it for about 2,000. And then once you do that, then you kind of run out. Like it's a little bit harder to like make money. But that was all I needed was to get the gaming PC. I ordered it all online, and then here we are.
And then then you became a Challenger League player, and then it kind of snowballed.
Yeah.
What did you? What season did you start in on League?
Season 3. So it was like the first year that ever came out was Zach. So Zach, he was the first ever release, which is really, really old. But I went through like the whole thing, you know, like that's where the TF in my name comes from. Was I was a Twisted Fate one trick by the end.
Oh really? Wow, there's a lot of those in the UK apparently. There's a lot of DF mains grow score moment.
Yeah, I was better than grow score though, obviously.
You Challenger, what Challenger since you started playing, or like how long did it take you to get there?
Like 5 years to get there. And I honestly got there for like 2 weeks And then Overwatch came out, and I just stopped playing the game. It was fucking. It's like it's crazy to think about that. I spent all my time getting to this, and just like a new toy, and I don't even know why. I think it was in Overwatch. There was always an element of like, like I always had this feeling that if I'd got into League from the start and I'd had my natural career progression and I took it seriously, maybe I could have gone pro. Like that was what I kind of had in the back of my head. So with Overwatch, I think loads of people did that, right? Like everyone who got in on the beta, they were like, if I like actually take this seriously from day one, I can be on the ground floor of like pro level. And that's why you see so many of that like original, like all of like the reinforcers of the day,
Yeah.
who like started out strong and then eventually like retired quite quickly once like the younger generation came in. But that was like my kind of idea, I think.
Yeah, I mean I think that happens with a lot of games, like Valorant too. I think is another good
Yeah, everyone
example of
jumped on
that.
it, right?
Everybody jumps on
Yeah.
it, and then you're seeing the people that transition from one game to the next. Maybe they were like really good, or maybe they were like okay at the game, and then they transfer to the new game. They're really good because they have the foundational skills. It happened with like Quake coming into and
Mm.
TF2 into Overwatch. Like
Right, yeah,
all the
yeah.
Quake players, they're sick aimers. Oh, they all play Lucio now, and they just sit on the payloads
Yeah.
because like the new gen is just better, and that people just
I
get
always
better at
felt
the
like
game.
when you see the people that like hop games, I feel like most of the time, if you were just like average tier two player in Overwatch, you never get above average tier two in a different game, Because I feel like there's
Right.
actually something like mechanical or mindset which caps you at that level. And especially for the type of person to jump, like I was, I guess, like from one thing to the next, like the next shiny thing, or this will be my big break. It almost kind of admits that there was like something in your mindset where it's like, oh, it's just the game or the situation that's holding me back. So that's what I think. I think if you were like tier two in Overwatch and you change to another game, you'd still be tier two. You won't make it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, look at oh my god, I'm
I mean,
forgetting
there's
his name.
exceptions, I'm sure,
Zombs and
right?
stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a few like top
Zachary
tier
was like pro for Valorant for a while, and then like,
Zachary,
but then if you look at
Boostio,
Carpe, right?
Boostio as
If you
well.
look at Carpe, tier one in Overwatch, still plays tier one Valorant to this day, right?
Yeah.
Like,
There are big
they're just.
exceptions there. You
I
just
mean, he's
hear
the
about
opposite
them
of the
probably.
exception, right? Like, he's like an actual. He reached the top level in one game, so when he went to a different game, his mindset, his work ethic, mechanics, he's going to reach the top again, I think.
Yeah. It's been interesting to watch Korea's kind of transition, or like sorry, Korean players transitions from like Overwatch to Valorant, because especially all the hit scan players that are like cracked aim anyway. Like Lastro was playing a lot of Valorant, I know, in the Overwatch League, and he was just a fucking beast, and everybody was like, he's probably going to
Yeah.
Valorant. Although I don't know what's happened to Lastro now. I don't know if he's in Valorant or if he's not. I don't keep up
No,
with the scene.
he's doing military service now. I think. I think
Oh,
so.
that
He's got that. Yeah,
that
the
makes a lot of
classic
sense actually.
Korean military service, which kills every career.
Yeah, that's so. It's honestly, it's quite sad actually when you can kind of think about it, especially when you look at Overwatch League as well. It's like, okay, so we have the players for this amount of time. At some point, they're going to need to do military service. We need to like win every championship ring we can before they do military, and they're forced to do that. It's
Yeah, no one can come back from it either, right? Like you literally can't like a year and a half out, not playing any video games. It's impossible to recover.
it's really rough. Did you? I guess that wasn't really much of a problem for you guys, obviously in London Spitfire back in Overwatch League, because all the Europeans, all good, and the Americans as
Yeah.
well. It was pretty chilling. How was
Uh,
your
I
time
mean,
in the league? I kind of want to get onto that because obviously that's a big kind of stepping stone for your platform, because you went from, like you said, League of Legends to like World Cup and in Overwatch, and then boom, straight into Overwatch League, and being on a team that a lot of people, including us, like rated pretty low coming into the scene, and then or into the a lot of the seasons like later on. But you kind of made your own name for yourselves, and yeah, how was that initially coming in as a head coach?
yeah, I mean, I'd obviously been in the league for 3 years on Philly, but that was like as an assistant coach. So I'd kind of like perhaps like naively made the decision to stay as like assistant coach for a little while longer to like become ready, like kind of with this idea that the Overwatch League was going to last forever.
Yeah.
Which obviously it didn't. But I think that like in terms of my career, I think the timing and stuff worked out pretty well. I think that I was like a pretty, I think ironically, I guess like similar to the reason I won all my money gambling on the website. I don't like to follow what everyone else does, Like, I was thinking about this the other day, and it's like I've actually, since I've been head coach, I've actually never played the meta once, you know? Like London,
Right.
we never played the meta. Flash Ops, we won, we didn't play the meta. Everyone else was on Ram, we played Queen. And World Cup, we lost because we played Orisa and everyone else was playing Sigma. Like in stage one of WCS, we were playing Dive, everyone else was in this. We were playing Ram, everyone else was playing Orisa, right? So actually, I haven't actually gone into a single tournament as a head coach playing the meta. I kind of realized this, like, wow, okay, actually, maybe I have a problem. I'm too addicted to being a contrarian, you know? Um, but I also think that, especially if your team like London was, I think it's unquestionably the right decision, you know? I think that being one of these just like middle to lower pack teams that just plays the same as all the teams that are better than you and you're just constantly copying them, there's just never an opportunity to take over, you know? Um, and maybe whilst I tried to make Sombra Winston Tracer dive work a little too long in season 6, I think overall, like that was one of the things that I feel as a coach I did maybe almost before anyone else. Like Chengdu obviously had their own thing where they just kind of like played random heroes. But I felt like we on London were one of the first teams to actually go off meta, but actually like strategize it, you know, not just press random heroes, like actually like really, really, really work at it like consistently. I guess like maybe there was like Shanghai season in the GOAT season they did a little bit too.
Yeah.
And I think that that's been the type of decision that you even see today that teams start to realize is like the way to go. I think that that was maybe one of like the things that I was like most proud of that I made like a decision as a coach, which is I kind of was one of the first to break away from just, oh, there is a meta, we have to play the meta.
I mean, it definitely helped the team's branding as well as like the gameplay too, because everybody was excited to watch your team. Like every single time London comes on, people love it, and that was what really helped. I think a lot of the popularity for your squad throughout the years. Because if you are conforming to a meta, you probably would have just been a team that was on like lower tier, like bottom of the pack, maybe bottom to middle of the pack kind of thing, on like individual skill, on like copying meta. But because you chose something that was fun, everybody was like, "Holy shit, this seems fun as hell," and that was, I
Yeah.
think, missing some of the time. Well, you could argue in terms of balance, but within the league, like so many stale metas was a bit of an issue, I think.
I mean, I think this is obviously something on the podcast we discuss like every week, but it does feel like the one of the problems Overwatch has had as a spectator sport is when you load in, you see the same 5 heroes on both teams. I think it's not fundamentally what Overwatch is about, right? Like I think when this game was invented, the idea was to swap heroes to play different things, like to be a bit of variety. And I think that from both like a strategic element, but also like a viewership element, like that decision that teams made to just always just copy each other, I think um, was maybe not the most significant reason, but it was a significant reason in why the Overwatch League like eventually came to an end.
Is there anything that you think about and look back at the Overwatch League and think, oh, that could have been improved and that would have definitely helped, like the Overwatch League or like maybe even your team as a whole? Is there anything you'd go back and change for yourself?
Nah, I mean, I think I'm more. I mean, the Overwatch League could never succeed. I think the product of watching Overwatch is too difficult to the point where it was never going to attract enough people to make the money. Like, how much were teams buying in for? Like 20 to 35 million, right? In like season 1 and season 2. Like,
Something
that's
ridiculous.
like, presumably from a business perspective, you're going to need to make like 3 to 4 million profit a year to see that come back to you by the end of the league in like season 10. I don't think there was ever enough people that could stay interested in competitive Overwatch for that to work. So I think it was fundamentally like a flawed business idea where they oversold how much the product could go. You know, like everyone criticizes Blizzard, right? But I think even if you had a time machine, you made every single decision correct, you could never grow it to where these franchises were making. Because I mean, you saw the costs of these franchises too, right? With like the visas and the houses and the salaries.
Right.
Like these companies were going to have to bring home like 10 million in revenue to offset the costs, and yeah, so it was just like I think it was the idea behind it. I don't think was necessarily bad, but the price point was impossible to become profitable. Um, so I don't know. Like I think there was stuff that we could have done earlier, but I think whether it dies in season 6 or season 8, I think the same outcome was kind of inevitable from the start.
Yeah, and obviously that transition year between Overwatch 1 and Overwatch 2 was a little bit rough as well, where like the game was being broadcasted, but we couldn't play the game. I think that was
Yeah.
that's not really an issue to do with the league or like even Blizzard and like Team 4 and just releasing the game. That was just an unfortunate circumstance, but I definitely think that hurt the league as well because especially casting it too. I'm like, whenever I get off a cast, I'm like, I want to play right now. I want to play for the next 5 hours because I've just cast and I've watched sick plays and I want to do the same thing. But like, not being able to boot up the game. You're booting up into Overwatch 1, you're like, bro, like I don't want to play this shit, especially after playing like the beta and alpha and stuff. It was a little rough. Yeah.
I mean, I think you can probably make a pretty solid argument that the dev team or whatever it is like didn't make the decisions to like help the esport grow the same way that maybe you see like the support Riot gives their games, right? And you're so jealous of it, right? Like, oh my god, could you imagine? They're doing in-game skins, they're featuring it on the homepage on whatever it is. But I still think like even whatever they did, I think like this idea that like the season 1 and season 2 viewership was ever going to stay consistent, I think is this idea that GOATs killed the Overwatch League is naive. It was always going to happen regardless of what happened, I think.
Yeah, GOATs I was casting for like a year and a half because we had it in contenders before the Overwatch League, and I was like, god damn, this meta needs to go. We got to stop this bullshit, this quad tank bullshit, like quad tank, triple tank, etc. Like, man, looking at tanks running in each other was not fun for like 6 hours a day on like in contenders. It was fun to like look at the micro, but I always say GOATs was a nice meta, but if it lasted a season, it would have been fun. Not a season, like I mean a
stage.
season these days. Yeah, sure, a stage. Yeah.
I agree.
It would have been super sick. Cause it's like, wow, that's a very different way of playing the game, and it did produce some of the highest levels of Overwatch we've ever seen. To be fair, like the Titans shot, kind of like those matchups, and man, they were so sick. They looking back, we're probably seeing higher levels of play in terms of mechanical skill nowadays, but like watching those two Titans clash was just unbelievable Overwatch. I think it was I
mean, you can't even imagine it now, getting 12 months to work on one meta versus the same comp, like the level of intricacy that you should be able to do. It's like it would be incredible. So yeah, it kind of makes sense that the overall level felt higher.
Right.
I feel like GOATs needed to go earlier, but I also think that I don't buy into this idea like, oh, if we just didn't have GOATs, we would be League of Legends. We'll be $10 billion tournaments.
Yeah, it's not happening. I mean, nowadays, especially with OWCS, like the metas are changing like super quickly. It's been really cool. Like patch changes have been very harsh, sorry, on different heroes and like just knocking them out of meta left, right, and center, which has been really cool. Do you think is a positive future in terms of balance and like keeping up with evolving metas? Do you think we're heading in the right direction with that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I feel like since Overwatch 2, the balance has been pretty spot on. I think that most metas, it feels like there has been options in terms of you can play multiple comps, and the only times there is exceptions are when a Junker Queen or like a Kiriko first came out, and then they were like too OP. But that's also really good for the game, I think. I feel like with like Venture and with Mauga, I think like they've been nerfed too soon. I don't mind the idea of like a new hero being really OP for like a few weeks. Everybody has to play it. Maybe has to buy it or however the microtransactions work. And then everyone gets to feel out the hero, like see strengths, weaknesses, and then kind of nerf it so that it just becomes part of the cast, But I feel like most of the time in Overwatch 2, like if you've wanted to play BAP, you can play it. If you've wanted to play Ana, you can play it. Maybe Zen has been unplayable most of the time, but I feel like if you've wanted to be Winston team, there hasn't really been a meta where it's been like impossible. The same with like a lot of tanks. So I feel like the game is now like almost in a way it's like more stable to the point where everything is kind of like constantly viable. Whereas I think when we look back at Overwatch 1, it felt like, no, these 6 heroes are viable, and when they are worked together, this is like a hard meta. Either that or teams were just not smart enough to be able to like invest time into different comps back then. Maybe they like the game and like coaches' understanding of the game was too new and naive, maybe. But yeah.
What do you rate the coaches in the Overwatch League then? Like not specifically like naming and like doing a tier list or anything, but do you think coaching in the Overwatch League was as good as it could have been? Because there's always this kind of, especially on like broadcast and the way viewers and not players, but viewers look at the Overwatch League and like competitive games. Coaches really aren't there in the forefront. Like you see Krusty, like the big names like Krusty, Moon, yourself, obviously, but a lot of teams, their coaches were a little bit more invisible, like in the shadows, kind of like helping out. But then it's obviously very quick to blame the coach, or at least people online are, especially if a team is kind of like hard losing. Do you think coaching in the Overwatch League was kind of an easy role in that regard, or do you think maybe, just maybe, a lot of coaches were just kind of dog at what they did?
Yeah. Okay, fuck it, I'll say it's okay. I actually think looking back on it, like the quality of coaching in the Overwatch League history was actually terrible.
Right.
I look at like upon hindsight, some of like the decisions in terms of like comps, in terms of like overall strategy. I mean, you hear the stories of all the time. Every year, it sounds like if you talk to players on the team, there was like 10 coaches who check out immediately. They either get like bullied out of the team, or they're just there. Like loads of management made decisions to do what we would call kappa coaches, who actually just got the job and like don't do anything, don't play the game, don't understand the game. There's a lot of like dad coaches, and some dad coaches were able to work, but most of the time I think that these were just, like there was some people who, if you'd actually watch them day to day coach, I think you would be absolutely shocked. And I think it's kind of inevitable for a new game, right? Like anyone who understands the game is probably playing it, and there was only once like players who've played for a while that start to retire. Like Gumba was like the same as me, right? Gumba was maybe the best coach ever, but he played for a few years, didn't reach the highest level, maybe because of like mechanical inefficiency, and then became like a coach. Like I went through like a similar thing. And I'm not necessarily saying that if you didn't play the game, you can't be a good coach, but I know, yeah. I think upon hindsight, like I think if I look back on it now, I really would love to see if I could take charge of Fusion Season 2. I wouldn't play goats, I wouldn't have played goats anymore. I wonder what I could have done. Like, was it actually impossible to beat goats? Or if we like had the right mindset, like could we have made that triple DPS like ball comps work earlier? Like, was there a way to do it? Could we have done better than just playing goats? But I think that like there was just like everybody just knew in season 1, and I think the same was kind of true in season 3 and 4. It was like, yeah, we're just playing this, guys. This is just what we're playing. And I feel like that aspect of coaching was always like so bad, especially early on.
Do you think because of goats that kind of resulted in coaches being a little bit more lazy? Because it's like it's meta for like, however many years, and you said, maybe we'd play something else. Do you think that kind of led to that kind of coaching, not philosophy, but kind of what would you say, like just kind of laid back kind of attitude
Yeah,
and like
maybe.
checking out?
I think no, like it was funny because I don't know if you were like watching much during like season 2. I guess you were, but there was like that massive like online discussion. I think it was ironically Monty Christa who started it, and then he was talking about like how bad it was that Houston Outlaws would play goats against Shock because it was a guaranteed loss. Like there was actually a
Right.
0%
I
chance
remember
they could
that.
win.
Yeah.
And I remember Monty got in a lot of shit, and I think Monty's had some pretty hot takes, but I think upon hindsight that one aged pretty well, and it actually like I look at it even now in OWCS, so we would play against some of these teams and they would just play meta against us. And I'm like, what's the point, Like, you can't win. We played a Face It game just now. We played against a team and they played Ball, Zen, Anna, and we absolutely destroyed them. But it was the correct decision. If they just played Mirrored, they would have lost 100%. So although they took a gamble and it was nowhere near working, it was the correct decision from like a coaching standpoint. And I feel like I wonder how many games Shock went into during that season, and it was already won. There was like a genuinely a 0.01% chance of the other team beating them, because everything that they were doing, they just tried to copy from Shock with worse players.
Right.
And and then the coaches would come out and the players, "Oh, sorry guys, we should do better. We're working hard." Blah blah blah. It's like, yeah, okay.
I mean, you're just copying the enemy team, and like you said, with worse players, you're just going to lose. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I think
which is what
definitely
happened
there's
like
some merit
every
to that.
single week, right?
Right,
Yeah,
yeah. Especially with the top tier teams, like, oh, you're playing Titans, they're gonna just destroy you. Like it doesn't matter
yeah.
what you end up playing, to be fair. But at least if you play
Yeah.
something a bit weird, like maybe it kind of works out.
I mean,
What do
we did it too, right? So this isn't me like
right.
shit talking everyone. Like we on Fusion went into Shock and Titans in New York and played Goats and just got 0-3, 0-3, 0-3, like done. I was 0-4 back in the day because that was an interesting format, but like that was just what everybody did, And there was like I look back on it, I don't even think we tried. I don't think we tried a single time to counter it.
Right.
Like I think we just accepted it from day one. I remember when Sombra Goats became a thing, then teams were like, "Oh, yeah, maybe we can try this." Because it was like an alternative option, but there was like so little innovation back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that innovation came from contenders, weirdly enough. Like, it wasn't even from like Overwatch League, right? It was Element Mystic who ended up playing like the Sombra Goats with Doha, and it was like, oh shit,
Yeah.
this is insane because you can farm the tanks because they have such large HP pools. We hit he gets an EMP every single fight, and then we just win because we can just
Yeah.
roll over you because you've got no abilities. And EMP was like insane back then too, and like farming
Yeah.
with Sombra was ridiculous. Yeah.
And I look back at it, like in my mindset as a coach back then, it never once occurred to me to innovate. It was only just
Hmm.
how can we do the Zaya bubbles the best? What's the best brig off angle? What's this? And it's like, wow, like even I look back at myself as a coach back then and I'm like, oh my God, like what were you doing? Like just use your brain for like half a second, you know?
It's good that you have that level of hindsight though, and you can look back and say, "Wow, I was a bit
Yeah.
shit. Like I wasn't good." Is there
Yeah.
anything you kind of tell yourself back then, apart from what you just kind of said? What would you say if you had a chance to go back in time and speak to your former self?
I think the biggest problem I had as a coach was I was maybe effectively too afraid. I had like I guess like too significant imposter syndrome. So I felt like I was too afraid to like back my own thoughts and way that we should coach to the point where it just I was a Kappa coach for a few seasons, you know, like I would just sit there and let the other coaches do the hard work and just kind of like just go with the flow. And one thing that like maybe the first and most important lesson I learned in coaching was like this lesson of like authenticity, you know, like even if like there's no right and wrong way to coach. Like there isn't like a it's not like a binary test where it's like, yep, that's right or that's wrong. But I think if you approach the players with a system or an idea and they can tell that you genuinely believe in it and they genuinely believe in the way that you coach it, I think human beings have this amazing like bullshit detector, you know, where you can just sense, right? You can just like smell on someone like if they're being like, oh, this guy actually has like charisma and he actually like means what he's saying, or this guy's just like a faker, or his heart's not really in it. You can like just from like a 5 minute conversation, you can feel that about a person just from some aura, you know.
I know, yeah, I
Um,
know what you mean.
and I think like as a coach, the way that the other coaches wanted to coach was different to me, but I just wanted to go with the flow because my priority was not getting fired, maybe. Um, and I think that there was like a moment in season 4 when we were in South Korea, and it was like the last stage. It was going into playoffs, and I was like, "Well, you're fired for sure, Chris. Let's be real. Like you kind of coasted through season 3, you got a second chance, and you spent the first half of the season doing nothing again. So why don't you just try for the last like quarter of the season, just coach the way that you want to coach because you're gonna get fired anyway. Who cares? And like the results from that were insane. Like the players wanted to keep me, and it was like I had this like reputation. I was like this 2CP coach, right? All I would do was coach our team out to play 2CP, but our 2CP win rate was unbelievable, you know. And it was like, oh wow, like there was this moment. I was like, well, good thing you've just spent 3 years not coaching because maybe you could have actually had a chance to do something good for this like Fiddy Fusion team, you know. And Fusion was so good to me. They gave me like jobs, opportunities, like they looked after me, and I literally did nothing for them basically. And I went away to London, and that did good coaching. And I was like, ah, yeah, sorry about that, guys. Thanks for the money and the career start.
I mean, a big career starter for you. But I mean, some realization there. You got taught a lesson by yourself at one point, like, "Hey, I'm going to be fine." That's a good way to act, I think, in a lot of ways. Just like, okay, fuck it, like the literal fuck it
Yeah,
attitude. It's just like, well, I don't know what's going to happen later. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just
yeah.
going to try something different, which is quite cool. Do you think what do you think are the best qualities in a coach then, from your perspective?
So I don't know. I think the most important thing for coaching, in my opinion, is I actually think that like you probably hear it a lot with certain coaches like, oh, you don't need to understand the game that high, you don't need to like create a system. But I'm like, I think that's totally cap, totally cap. Like, look at any sport, football, the best managers in the world are fundamentally football first, tactics first. Like how our team plays football is the most important thing. And one thing I always think is if my players think they are smarter than me, then it's always over. Like it's so difficult. Like you have to like okay, maybe they at least have to respect and think, yeah, okay, Chris actually knows what he's talking about when it comes to the game. So that's your knife. You have to have that sharp the whole time, otherwise you just have nothing. And then one thing I always tried to be was because I've always been kind of a leader and I've been able to kind of like talk. I maybe have like decent like public speaking skills. I always thought, well, if I can be like a good in-game coach, but also actually like do the dad coaches, my dad coaching is going to get better because the players respect my game opinion. My in-game opinion is going to get better because they like my dad coaching. And I thought, well, if you can do both, then you can actually be a good coach. You know, like too many coaches in Overwatch League are either only in-game or they're only a dad coach, and they make no attempt to do both. But I think if you have both, then you also gain the trust of your players in terms of that. But I think that like when I think about my job, like now in the last 2 years of my career, like 95% of it has been how to fix the Overwatch. What comps do we play? Where do we
Right.
position? Like, what's the theory? What's this? Like, what's our standard? How do we use this? What's this? What's this? Maybe when I first joined London, there was like a culture building that I had to go through. I had to like fix the culture at the team. I had to kind of like give them the right mindset where I could. But even then, I don't understand how these coaches that don't like that let somebody else do the coaching spend 24 hours a day. Like you just watch scrims and then you just like, oh, let's facilitate a discussion. I don't get it. I think that every single successful coach, and this will be when one day I'll wash up and I'll get fired from my team. It'll be because my ego is too big to the point where I've lost touch of the game and I'm forcing my team to play a certain way, and then they'll lose trust on me and then they'll kick me out and my career will over. That's how my career will end. But I'm actually okay with that because I think the second I stop like dictating the way that my team plays entirely, I no longer think I'm a good coach, and I'm then just back to old Chris who just is trying not to get fired.
That's a pretty detailed perspective. I like it. It's interesting to hear from a coach's perspective on like how they deal with teams, and like the two dichotomies there of like dad and then in game is quite interesting. And yeah, maybe a lot of coaches can kind of take away from this, because obviously coaching right now, especially in OWCS, it does feel like a rare role at this moment in time. There's so many like player-led teams and player-run teams right now, and then coaching is, you got the coin trees of the world who's managing and coaching like 17 different teams at once. You know what I mean? Like, honestly, mad respect, mad hustling out there, but it's a tough kind of world. Did you, coming into this transition between Overwatch League and OWCS, did you see yourself like moving on from Overwatch esports as a whole, or did you know you already had a place?
Yeah, my mindset was very much, yeah, I'm gonna keep. I dropped out of uni for this, so maybe like when Gumba can retire, he has like something to fall back onto in the real world. But for me, I kind of put all of my eggs in this basket. So I live in Newcastle. It's not that expensive. So even though my salary is a lot less, the salary that I do get combined with prize money when we occasionally win, ends up being like enough to keep the lights on. And I think that at this stage of my career, I try to do private coaching on the side. I'm doing like the podcast, maybe doing a little bit of streaming, like trying to like get like other revenue sources. But I think for me, realistically, that like I love this job so much. Even now, I spend all my time doing it, and I never get bored. So I'm just going to do it until it's impossible, even if it's maybe not the best career choice for me.
It feels like a lot of esports, like you just described, honestly. It's like, I'm just going to keep doing it because this shit is sick. I just love it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I want to exist doing this for as long as I can. I feel the same about casting as well. Like, I want to do this for as long as I possibly can. Because it's just, I don't know, it's a dream job that I didn't realize it was a dream at the time. You dropped out
You
of university.
Yeah.
What were you studying?
I was in like IT and business, so I was just doing something like
Right.
boring. I was barely studying. Like university was a terrible decision for me in general. I was too ADHD to ever do uni. Like my brain was too many Modern Warfare 2 lobbies. I had no chance at succeeding in the university environment. Um, but yeah, yeah. I don't know. I feel like with the esports thing, you probably do it too. You probably talk to like family members or friends, and they just complain about how much they hate their job, and you think, okay, my job. Don't tell my wife this, please. But my job is like the highlight of my day every day. Like getting to go on the voice chat with those boys and figure out how we're playing Reinhardt and Gibraltar today. That's actually like the best part of my day. And I think that actually puts you in, even if I don't earn as much money as I used to, it puts me in a pretty privileged position, because how much of planet Earth go to job because they have to pay the bills, versus how many like me and maybe like you get to go to work and actually enjoy it, and actually be like, yeah, I'm glad I'm working today.
Yeah.
I'm canceling our weekend off because I'd rather work. My day offs are horrible sometimes. I get a day off and I'm like, oh, what do I do? I don't know. I don't know how to spend it. There's only VODs I can watch. It's tough.
Yeah, no, I get the exact same feeling. I'm in the same boat. If I could cast every single day, like I'd cast Overwatch, I would 100%. Like
Yeah.
the game is such a, I don't know. This I always say this, but it's like there's something beautiful about Overwatch that I can't really describe, because I casted League of Legends first. Like I said before, I like casted Orcs when he was playing in Prem and stuff like that. And that was a good time. I really enjoyed it. I think League of Legends is a good like stepping stone for me. And then obviously Overwatch came out, and I was like, oh, this game is quite fun, and it's like TF2, and I love TF2. So it's kind of led on from there. Yeah, that is kind of the esports like feeling is, I want to get up and do this every single day. And I think that also kind of helps you get better at your job too, because it doesn't feel like work. You're just kind of showing up and being like, okay, I'm gonna fucking do this thing. It's gonna be fun as hell. And especially on like a broadcast, it's easier if you're having a lot of fun at the same time. You can tell when people don't want to be there. It's very easy to tell.
Agreed.
Yeah, it's quite funny that. What would you be doing outside of Overwatch like esports then? Because you said obviously you kind of dropped out of university and you were doing IT and business. Is there anything you'd kind of go into or would like to go into if you weren't doing esports?
I don't know. I actually really don't know. Um, I feel like my mindset is one, I either need to find a job somewhere where it becomes like a full meritocracy where I can work as hard as I want, but then those results end up in some sort of gain. Or I just need the most chill job possible where I like, there's a guy that works at the post office in my village. This guy brings his Nintendo Switch in and just plays and just clocks in and clocks out. I either need that job or I need like a full on grind job, but I can't allow myself to have like a job in the middle where there's enough stress and work hard, but my hard work or my success in the field doesn't. That's what's truly addicting about being a professional, like a competition, like a coach, is
Right.
when you work hard and you do something, it actually works, and you see it. And all of a sudden, like go from finishing 18th to 6th or whatever it is, you know. And I think that's like everyone should have an opportunity to work in a job environment like that. If all companies work like that, then the world would just be such an unbelievably efficient place. Like everything would run perfectly if there was a way to like monetize meritocracy across the board.
I think it's safe to say that's kind of what motivates you then, and like getting up in the morning and just being like, we can make this team from an 18th place finish team to a top three, like, and then we can dominate the rest of the world. That's a big motivating
For
factor for
sure.
you, I assume.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, we had a scrim against Ents today. We lost 2 maps. So my job tomorrow is to kind of win those 2 maps like tomorrow. And I think, yeah, I think that maybe our goals have changed. We went from just trying to like punch up a little bit to now our expectation is to kind of win everything that we participate in. But the challenge is ultimately the same. Be the best version of ourselves we can be, I suppose.
Well, Dallas is obviously at the end of this month. For everybody at home listening as well, it's the 9th of the 5th, or 5th of the 9th if you're American. Yeah, so obviously quite a couple of weeks until we actually end up going to Dallas. What are your kind of expectations moving into the tournament? Because man, I mean, the Korean teams look fucking terrifying. Like as a North American EU fan, you know.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, let's see. I mean, I've beaten those same players before with the
True.
same team. So if there's a team that isn't going to be scared, it'll be us. I think for us to be finished as the top Western team would feel really good. Like if we could finish out of like Toronto and Ents and M80, then whatever happens, it's probably a pretty successful tournament. But I really think that with our roster and the style that we play, if there's any team that can beat the Koreans, it's us. And I don't think we're going to go into that Falcons game with any element of fear or we can't beat them, because last time we sat across this like every single player in that team, if you check who knocked them out of the Overwatch League, it was us. Anyone on Shock, anyone Atlanta, it was us. So no reason we can't do it again.
Zero fear. And
Yeah,
power of friendship on London, and now obviously in Space Station. It's a
exactly.
pretty insane transition too. Obviously, you picked up Astro, like easily the best Western Lucio player, I think at least. Um,
Yeah.
your team did look like rank 1 EU hands down. Like, what were your thoughts last time in stage 1? Obviously stage 2, very much more successful for yourselves. But stage 1, like what happened there? Obviously, Ex Oblivione was kind of the kryptonite that you didn't see coming. It felt like.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like we learned a lot from that stage. I think that I learned that maybe there is like something to be said about like how different styles, like different types of comps are easier to play in scrims than in officials, and how we should, where possible, avoid playing comps that require like really detailed decision making in the moment under pressure, because it's a lot more difficult. It's a lot easier to play like either really aggressive comps or really passive comps where like your decision making is quite simple. I think for us, from like a mental perspective, we'd never had to deal with feeling like we should beat everybody. It's quite difficult to be the favorites, you know. It's quite difficult to know that every time you lose a map, that in theory, like people are laughing at you and that it was like an underplay. Like if all you can do is win it, that it's a lot easier to be the underdog team, which we were. And I think there was like a mentality that we had in terms of, it was like, if you watched our game versus EXO, we were almost afraid to lose, to the point where we never just went and took the win, you know. And I think that was something that we kind of all spoke about. Said whatever happens, that has to change. That we have to be a more like aggressive team, especially whilst we're in Europe, where we probably have like a mechanical advantage on like almost every role when we play. So I think that I had to learn how to coach a team that was like the best mechanically, as opposed to one that I was often having to coach games where in theory we were playing against like better teams like on paper, and we had to kind of like find a way to navigate that. So I think that like my strategy and structure in stage one upon hindsight was like really terrible. I had people off like comfort heroes, and we were like our mindset and stuff wasn't where it needed to be, but hopefully we've kind of fixed that a little bit now.
Speaking of like the power disparity in the region in that case, because yeah, you were kind of used to punching up to the big teams in Overwatch League as London Spitfire. Now you're kind of one of the top dogs, if obviously if not the top dogs now. Like, how did how do you think the scene is going to evolve over the next few years? Because in my mind, and what I've always kind of said, and I look at other regions too, like Japan, for example, I've always said, well, in theory, over the next couple of years, if the system stays the same, there's going to be a lot more talent. There's going to be a lot more competition. It's going to be a lot more competitive. It's just now we've split apart Overwatch League. It's a bit of a weird like gray zone where there's top teams and that is it. And then there's like lower teams that kind of beat each other sometimes. How do you think the scene's going to evolve in that regard?
I mean, I think you'd probably be naive because every single sport upon history, eventually someone new takes over, right? Um, I've seen UFC champions who are like, this guy's never going to lose, and then he loses. And I've seen teams, oh, this team's always going to be the best. They're not. So I mean, assuming that there was still a competitive scene, that at some point we will. I mean, we're already probably like maybe like the I guess Enza's average age is older than ours, but we're probably like the second oldest team in EU.
Yeah,
So
probably. Yeah.
we have a lot of experience and a lot of history, and we understand how to play the game, and we're probably mechanically better. But there'll be these kids, presuming that people want to take this game seriously, that will eventually come for our jobs, and for us, it's kind of like how long before we get too old, you know? I mean, some games, if you look at CS:GO, 30-year-old pros who are winning it, right? Like there's a I think if you have practiced the right habits and you have the right things, I think there's no reason you can't play for an extra 3 or 4 years at this level. Um, but I'm sure these young kids will come for us.
Do you think there's like an upper limit to the age in Overwatch? Because like you said, CS is a bit more of an anomaly in terms of esports. Although to be fair, I'm not really familiar with like Dota or like FGC. I'm taking this off of like a little bit of Apex and League of Legends, obviously mainly Overwatch. But the age range for Overwatch, especially in the Overwatch League, the average age was ridiculously low, like unbelievable.
Yeah. The thing is, CS:GO, the game never changes, right? So if you're good at it, you're
Right.
just good at it. Whereas the problem with Overwatch is this game changes. So you have to have like a what do they call it? Like a fluid brain or something, you know, where like you're still like growing neurons that you can still learn. There's a moment where your brain just gets hard, and you can. I've coached players who have hard brains, you know, and they just they see the game the way that they were taught it, and they don't have that passion or that energy or that drive like to learn. And what you do is you milk what you can get out of them, but eventually they have to go. And even our older players on the team now, I think, have enough passion to still learn new heroes and learn new styles. But at some point, their brains and my brain too will become hard to the point where we just kind of have to uh, ride it out for as long as we can.
That is a really funny analogy, actually. Just the hard versus soft brain, malleable. But it does make sense. I mean, I think what 25 is when your brain is like finished developing, like from a medical standpoint, I believe. It's around that age. It's like mid 20s. Like it doesn't stop growing
Yeah,
until then. So maybe that is the kind of upper limit. But with Overwatch ever evolving, yeah, it's hard to say because you know I always think about Virtus Pro, like when they had Pasha biceps and all those players that had like kids. I think at one point they all had kids on their team, like
yeah,
each one of them, and they were still competing at like the top level, and it was a little bit insane. It's like holy shit. And then you look at other esports, and it's like okay, the players have to be 18. They have to be
yeah.
17
You're
or
19
18.
too old.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
19. Oh, you're 20. Oh, retirement home for you, buddy.
yeah.
Sorry, or perma benched. Yeah, it's a little rough, and it's definitely changed now, obviously with OWCS because the Overwatch League was very no, it was a bit of a problem, I think, with the amount of like turnover and churn of players. It was
Yeah,
a little insane.
yeah. I mean, I think one thing that maybe that the us old guys have is that we have like so much experience, and we actually have like we've played the game at like a really high level. You know, like the competition in the Overwatch League was really, really significant. Like every scrim was tough. And it's possible that these new young players won't necessarily get that environment to learn the things like to improve in Overwatch, you have to be limit tested, right? And what would happen in Overwatch League is everybody's limits were tested to the extreme every single week, you know, and then teams would have to figure out like we had a VOD review like 2 days ago. And what we basically said is, yeah, this is like the Florida theory of how they played in grand finals because like they needed to fix this problem that we now have, so we need to copy this. But if you're like a young player and all your experience is like EMEA, you actually never probably like get pushed to the level where you need to improve. So it's possible that like this new system, it's almost harder in a way for these young kids because like if you're an 18-year-old kid and you come into the Overwatch League, it's like okay, it's tough, right? It can spit you out quite quickly, but also if you kind of embrace it, there is so much to learn from, and you are like really, really pushed a lot. So I don't know, like there's maybe an argument somewhere that in the current system that it's harder for them to climb up than it would have been in like a more competitive environment, but yeah, we got to see.
I mean, you kind of look at the solo level of solo queue play in North America when Overwatch League was going on, because you had like Proper and like Violet and like all the top like goated Korean players like playing on West Coast, and so the solo queue players were just kind of getting better because they're facing Proper in lobbies, and it's like I'm getting shit on. Oh wait, no, I'm not anymore. I'm like kind of trading kind of well with him and like winning games against him. You know, it's solo queue, but still, you're like you said, you're kind of limit tested in that regard. Even in that environment where you know it's not team orientated, it was more like you know solo queue. Like I'm gonna try and do my best, but and then EU is just kind of left out to dry. It really was because a lot of those players, like Exodial, I think has been one of my favorite players to watch in EU recently. He's sick, but he's not been tested against Proper or Profit or Birdering or you know any other like top tier DPS. You know it's a little rough for them in that regard, especially going to an international now where you're probably gonna have to face them. Like,
yeah, I mean for sure, right? Like I think that there's like elements of how to play in different metas, fast metas, slow metas, wide metas, like cooldown metas, like individual metas, flank metas, whatever it is, that it might be really difficult. It might take a long time for him to catch up to like the rest of us, I suppose. But like he's an example of like a young player who looks good. But I still think, no disrespect to him, that you can see the difference between like the Kai Quartz and Sparker, like the big three, you know.
The goats of EU currently.
Yeah.
Is there a meta? It could be recent. It could be in like an Overwatch 1 that you kind of look back to very fondly, like your favorite kind of meta to play in. And obviously, you played your own thing, but maybe play into. What was your favorite kind of meta to play the Ryan comp into or Rush comp?
Yeah, I think we liked playing against Dive because that felt like a real like clash of styles. Like to beat it was like, especially when Dive was strong, to beat it you had to be pretty good. I mean, ironically, my favorite comp to coach is Dive, even though it's the one that I have like by far the least success with. But maybe I think there's an element of like it's a bigger challenge. Like everything else, it's not like solved, but we kind of know how to play Brawl metas or Rhine metas or wherever it is. I think there was like a Winston, Diva, Sombra, Reaper, Lucio Moira meta in playoff season 3 before the hog changes. We loved that meta. That was like such a good meta for us, like full on ult economy, full on cooldown trades. We were like the best in the world at that. So I've got like a lot of like fond memories on that one. Maybe Ryan May, ironically, also in Philly Fusion season 3. We were also really good at that. I was always a Reinhardt guy.
Hell yeah. I mean, obviously you was main Ryan back in the day. Winston and Ryan, just hella main tanks, just going in, smacking people around. I mean, the Overwatch World Cup, I think it's been one of the best kind of tournaments throughout like Overwatch's history because I don't know, it just unites a lot of people and like the country rivalry is always like super fun.
Yeah.
World Cup, like any kind of crazy memories from back then being with the British boys and at BlizzCon and stuff like that.
I mean, yeah, we like the further you go back, the wilder we were when we like that had that very first. It was maybe like 2017 or 2018. We were like outrageously out of control. I mean, I think we got in trouble because the first night we got to the hotel, we got some beers. We went to the pool and we all was like skinny dipping, like just drinking, and we were like, so like everyone was like saying like Blizzard people would come to you. We know we saw you out of your window last night, all naked in the pool, and I was like, yeah, I don't know why, but that's just what we did, you know. And we had some like. I mean, we had some like boot camps in UK because there was so much money in Overwatch back then, and we just like we took the boot camp and we just went to the pub and then went to the casino, and it was like actually like properly like our party years, like with the Team UK days. But actually, like we loved each other to death, you know. Like actually, that team environment was as good as any I've been a part of. Like the Reals X Cruise Smex, Boombox, Mikey, AKSP, that era, that was untouchable, you know. Like I mean, it's actually really sad how like a lot of us, or at least a lot of me, like I don't keep in contact with them because I actually like love those boys to death, you know. And we had like some of the best times. Like when we were in officials together, it was like screaming as loud as we can, like we're gonna fuck the enemy team, like properly going for it, you know. But yeah, only good memories of World Cup, really.
Yeah, that lot. I mean, me and Bren and Smex, like we were playing oh god, Lethal Company like a few months ago for like a charity stream thing. That shit is so funny, man. Like
Yeah.
Smex is one of the funniest human beings I know.
He
Like
is, he
straight
really
up.
is. That's why I
God
picked him
damn.
this year for World Cup, even though he can't play Overwatch, you know.
It doesn't matter. As long as he's on the team, the spirit's there.
He's
He's in
got
the
good
comms.
vibes.
Like
Yeah.
exactly, good vibes, good banter. Speaking of like trash talk and stuff, obviously saying like we're gonna fuck those guys up. Like that has been something that I think Overwatch League missed completely. The whole trash talking thing. You can even like craft it like the old Korean like League of Legends things that they used to do in LCK. They used to like they're kind of scripted, but they're kind of trash talking each other, even though they don't really like to do that. I really enjoy the kind of interviews we have with players sometimes when they really kind of speak their shit and speak their mind. I think that is what OWCS can really bring out of teams and of players and coaches and everybody else. What are your kind of thoughts surrounding trash talk and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that we've been pushing quite heavily for on Uncoachable as well. Like, I think, I know, I have this like theory somewhere about Overwatch that the perceived demographic of the game is one that is like maybe like too soft, and we shouldn't like say anything bad, and we should just all be like boring, blah 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 blah. I think the reality is that like, especially in a game like ours, where like the product itself isn't so, like it's not like, the thing is, like, if League of Legends is so easy and so good to watch, they honestly sometimes they don't even need like personalities to make it work, you know. Whereas Overwatch, I don't think we're in that position. And one thing that we've tried to do with the podcast and everything is we've maybe attempted to include a different sense of humor than what Overwatch has had historically. Maybe sometimes it's too offensive for some people, but that's fine, you know. You don't have to watch it. But I think that there is a section of Overwatch fans who maybe found like the broadcast and the players and everything just boring, you know, like
Yeah.
and I really really think that like trash talk, like rivalries, a little bit of banter that pushes a little bit. I know it's like difficult on broadcast for you guys to like to say like crazy shit, right? But I think genuinely speaking, like I think that the way that the league handled like finding people for like the smallest things and like you can't have Pepe the Frogs and all of this, I think it just made this community which was just so boring, like, oh, we're all so nice and we love each other and all we just do is spread positivity. But now we need a bit of negativity, you know, like that's the reality of the world, you know. Maybe this is a hot take, but fuck positivity. We need negativity, you know. We need a little bit of hatred. We need villains, you know. Like like think about how the UFC blew up just off personalities
Yeah.
because you like love or you hate somebody. Like that
Right.
entire sport is built off the back of people like Conor McGregor and like did like that's it. And maybe an Overwatch Conor McGregor is extremely naive, but I think that the way that Blizzard and then also the way that community reacted to people who did attempt to be a little bit out there was so negative that we just forced all pro players to just be like inside their little box.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully more of us can have the mindset now where it's like, well, listen, if you know, if Overwatch doesn't work out, it's not like this is like the Overwatch League was this promised land where there was a six-figure salary in a mansion in LA, you know. So okay, I'm gonna make sure I get that. The promised land in OWCS is like $1,500 salary and you're living at home with your mum, you know. So fuck it, have a little bit of fun with it, you know. If you don't enjoy what you're doing, if you're not willing to piss some people off, then what's the point, you know? You can't retire off this. You can only do it if you're having fun. And I think that of course there's a section of Overwatch fans who don't like that and will be turned off by that message. But I don't know. I think we got to do it. We got to. If you look at games like Rainbow Six, you know, like my boy Jinxie from Space Station,
Right.
he has some pretty edgy content and some pretty out there stuff. But he built that game on his back. Like the viewership is purely because of him, you know. And I think we need more personalities who are a little bit more willing to get their hands dirty, because I'm not convinced that the super nice, respect everyone, never say anything, no trash talk is necessarily what actually brings people in.
Yeah, I know. I do completely agree. There's definitely like a middle ground where you can overstep the boundaries, but I don't think over the last, like, especially with just random interviews and people calling out, like, I think Hydron got called out a few weeks ago, right, by Sugar Free, I believe. Yeah, and like stuff like that is fun. It breeds character as well in like different players, and I think what Overwatch League did do correct in that regard was actually do comms check. It wasn't very much a, oh fuck these players, or like, you know, we're gonna fucking win, but it showed personalities of players that you wouldn't necessarily see otherwise, and I think that was a big positive from the league's perspective. But like actual like more raw stuff, what you're talking about is also is what is needed through shoulder content and stuff like that. I'm not going to go on and fucking talk shit and be like, this player fucking sucks. Like, that's not my job to do that. But if another player says that to another player, fuck yeah, that's sick. That's funny. And that is like, you are creating that villain that you kind of need. And it's just like, you can either hate them or you love them. That's just the nature of villains, right? Some people love the fucking Joker, some people hate him, you know?
Yeah, that's it. You know, it's why I feel bad for Hydron, because he put himself as like this heel, but he just got like, I just got like too much hate, you know, like like yeah,
right.
And it's like people kind of need to realize that like even if you don't like Hydron, you can't like you kind of want to like positively reinforce the behavior, because if you love watching him lose, don't make him retire or something, you know,
Right.
like. But I think like especially like the Reddit core of Overwatch is quite happy to just like to shit on everyone, which is maybe players just need to learn to deal with it for like the greater good. It's why I'm like trying to like push this like streaming scrims narrative as much as possible, because I think that gives like players a way to show their personality, to have like a little bit of fun with it, and to also make like some money on the side.
Yes.
Whilst people are like more
It's really
interested.
good.
So I think it's like one of those like win-win-win-win-win-win situations. But yeah.
I agree. I think streaming scrims, that was one of my, like, on my positives list of like moving to an OWCS format, was like, holy shit, like players can stream scrims. It's fun to watch that kind of stuff. It's also fun to hear comms. Some players don't end up streaming comms, which is also completely fine, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's okay. We're kind of like baby steps. We can see the gameplay. Sick. Maybe next time we see some comms. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. But like additional content out there is always going to be a good thing. I know OWCS has done a fantastic job of like also taking replay codes and showing everybody, oh, you want to watch Rocket today? Oh, you want to watch Hardy today? Oh, you want to watch X player, Y player, Z player? Like, great. That's fantastic. And streaming scrims, and like, oh, I will say the Space Station scrims, I watch them a lot. I watch Astro stream a fair bit. And God, the amount of people that will sometimes come in the chat and it's like, why are you muted? Or like, why aren't you responding? Or like some shit like this, like first time chatter. And I'm like, those are the people that we need. Like, those are the people that are coming in, maybe from OWCS, like casually viewing and like, oh, Space Station, I like this team. And like, oh, Astro's pretty funny. Like, Huddy is kind of funny, you know? It's, yeah. And I think that reinforces like this grassroots and the backbone of what OWCS can be, is like the players putting themselves out there more than they kind of already are.
I mean, I think if you look to a game, I looked into like a little bit like the like different esports, maybe like more around our level. And one thing that's like, Halo is an interesting esport, because almost every Halo pro is just a streamer that plays pro. You know, like they stream all day. They play all of their scrims on stream. Like there's a website where you can track every single result of a Halo scrim. Like they're all just public. Like there is no attempt to to hide it. And then they'll go to LANs and people will watch. And actually, what happens is that becomes an esport, which is basically personality driven. You know, like
it's like
there's no such thing.
Another
I guess I don't know. Yeah, but yeah, they do, because they stream all their scrims and stuff too, right?
All of their scrims.
And it's like every single pro player is a personality as opposed to a pro, you know? Whereas like, how good is ChrisTFer? You'd say he's pretty good, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, of course.
Do you know anything about ChrisTFer? He's just like, he never uses Twitter, never streams, like never talks, like, and it's like, yeah, okay, so ChrisTFer's really, really, really good, but ChrisTFer is not enough to make money in Overwatch anymore, you know?
Sure.
And what you need is these like, what we need is, I think ultimately, like for pro, like, unless we believe that the OWCS is going to grow to the point where salaries and prize pools will be sustainable enough to live on their own, actually we have to go to a model where it's almost like everybody's main source of income is streaming the game, you know, like streaming scrims, like streaming. And actually what we just do is we scrim and we go to LAN for content, you know, and like for fun. And that is how a lot of esports do it. Like, okay, in League of Legends, if you want to be a corporate drone, as Gator would say, you can be it, because if you're good enough, then you earn a big enough salary, no problem. Valorant, probably the same. But like I said, you have to understand, like, our team gets paid about as much as any team in Overwatch, and I'm not convinced it's like above the minimum wage, you know. And I think that over time, unless OWCS does grow and flourish and gets bigger and bigger, I think that to earn money in this, you almost have to become a streamer first and a pro player second. You can't do it the other
Right.
way around anymore.
Yeah, I think that's a really good perspective. I didn't know that about Halo, actually. I love Halo, although I haven't followed it for quite a while. But Apex is another example of that because, like Hal, for example, like the biggest streamer, like Sweet, all these other players that are top tier players, they also stream all their scrims. And like Nice Wig, who's like the biggest, is he the biggest streamer? I think Hal's the biggest streamer, but Nice Wig, who was like ex pro, used to play for CLG, has played on a few teams before in ALGS. And then it's like, okay, he just streams every scrim possible. He has a B stream, which is like the official broadcast, but like a B stream. And him and this guy called Greek sit down, talk over the games. He's a funny guy, so's Greek. And them bringing like every single scrim and like him going through different POVs and stuff like that. Like, again, going into comms. And yeah, dude, it really helps like reinforce the game and the esport as well. And you aren't wrong with the whole Kevster point. I think the only thing people really know about Kevster is like he's a sick player. The broadcast has always been kind of like he's like built to play Overwatch, like blah, 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 like that fucking classic line of Kevster, right? But that's really about it. Because
Yeah,
I hear him in comms sometimes, and like he's chattering, and I didn't think he was a big like peepo talker. I thought he was a bit more like DPS head down, kill people, but like he talks a lot more than I originally thought he did. But that's kind of helped. They're streaming scrims and like they're actually showing comms and stuff. And yeah,
yeah.
people do
I mean,
need
the
to
thing
stream
with
more of that stuff.
yeah, the thing with Kev is like if like the average person watches an OBCS game and they do the commentary, they wouldn't even know which voice is Kev's, you know.
Right,
Whereas
that's a good point.
if Hal or whoever this Apex guy has a comms check on the official Apex,
They
you
know
know it's Hal because you
he's
know who he is.
he's fucking swearing at his teammates and calling them fucking dog shit in comms. Like that is
Yeah,
like his brand. Yeah.
yeah, that's it. And you know, like that's like the problem is like there's too many teams, and maybe this is like one of the problems of our game being so Korean dominated that it hurts the Western audience in a way because like Koreans are never going to stream their scrims with comms, and even if you could, it's in Korean, right? So it's not that useful for
Right.
us. But like most teams, if they did a comms check, you genuinely don't know who's talking. You don't know the single thing about any of the players. And you know, like we said, if maybe if we're football or for League of Legends, where the product itself is so interesting that personalities don't matter, then whatever. But maybe UFC is an example again of it's a pretty fun sport to watch when people are
Yeah, it
knocking
is.
each other out. But it's still personality driven. You only watch the fights where you know the guy who's in it, and you have some sort of like history, or you like to watch his press conferences, or you like his previous fights. You know, like that sport is purely personality driven. And that's what we have to figure out. Like, is Overwatch a game that's ever going to be able to be product driven, or does it have to be personality driven?
It's a difficult one, especially like you said, with a lot of the Korean players not being able to stream scrims. Although I don't think that's necessarily as big of an issue now, with like the region split, because I would imagine a lot of the North American audience and the European audience, they're probably, although EU audience, when I was living in the UK, it was like very easy to watch like Apex, like Overwatch Apex, not Apex Legends.
Yeah,
Apex and LCK. I used to watch that every morning because I get up
like
and then
9 a.m.,
watch.
right? Like you wake up,
Exactly.
it's on.
It was
Yeah,
very
yeah, it's
easy for
good.
that. But the North American audience, not so much. It's like very hard to watch
Yeah,
Korean games because it's like, I think it's at like 3 a.m. or something stupid. Like something,
yeah,
I can't watch it. Like I get up early
yeah.
enough, I still can't watch that shit. It's impossible. Maybe I catch the trail
That's
end of a
it. I
game,
mean,
but um,
what we have to do is we have to grow EU Overwatch to the point where it gets more viewers than the others. You know, like we have to have like enough personalities in our game. But I think unfortunately, like a lot of the streaming scrim stuff, I don't think it is working, or I don't think it's. I think we. It almost feels like we need to hit another rock bottom for people to kind of like realize the truth. You know,
right.
like things are a little bit too good. So give us another season or two where things get worse, and then who knows?
Yeah, it's funny because I have the kind of opposite view of that. I think right now we are in the very like we just planted the seeds and it's only going to kind of grow over time. Maybe the popularity of OWCS will dip a little bit, but after this year and then rolling into next year, I think as players get better, the teams get more competitive and stuff. I think the game is only going to either not infinite fucking growth, you know what I mean, but we're going to get to a stage I think where we're going to be very happy with the product, and I think the viewership we're getting right now, it hasn't been bad. It hasn't been bad.
Yeah,
And with Face It integration and Esports World Cup and all these other kind of things that are going on, I think the game's in a good spot to be very successful later down the line, going into the future. So I would say I've got an opposite view of like, we don't need to hit rock bottom again. I don't think we will. I think the transition year was it.
Let's hope you're right. I mean, I think the thing that I realized this week, I was like, I went through every year of Overwatch League not knowing if the off season was the last one because there was going to be another season.
Right.
And I'm like, I wonder if I'm in a similar position now. Like, is there actually like an OWCS 2? Like, am I going to go through the same like 3 or 4 month period where I have no idea what's happening? So I hope you're right. I hope my pessimism is misplaced.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are pretty pessimistic around Overwatch a lot of the time. I think that's something that I've come to realize. Like, my God, the amount of complaining. About the game, the metas. Oh, my one trick. I can't play my one trick. Like, oh my God, I can't play my one trick for the next month because there's no patch. Please balance this fucking hero because I need to play them and that's the only way I have fun. Like the amount of complaining and shit like that. I'm like, bro, just fucking stop. I think there's a lot of pessimism in Overwatch and it kind of translates to Overwatch esports as a whole. But I think that's also a symptom of us being a punching bag for the last 6 fucking years, 7 years. You know what I mean? Like every time I just see thumbnail Overwatch dead, shocked face emoji, fire, Bobby Kotick on fire and shit. Like Overwatch League was killed by, or Blizzard was killed by Overwatch League. Like that's my favorite thumbnail of all time. Is the Overwatch was killed by the Overwatch League, or Blizzard was killed by Overwatch League. I'm like, okay,
surely not.
Actual clueless behavior. It's a little insane. So I don't know. Maybe I'm a little bit more positive, but maybe I'm delusional in that regard. So it's kind of yet to be.
We'll find out, I suppose.
Exactly. Yeah, but I'm excited for the future for sure. All right. Well, I think I'll wrap it up here. So, is there anything you kind of want to shout out? Of course, you've got your podcast with the other homies.
Watch Uncoachable on YouTube, the best podcast in the world.
There you go.
Overwatch, at least way better than Plat Chat and anyone who works on that podcast.
So true. Wait, spin. I'll link all that kind of stuff down below. Uncoachable is your Twitter and everything else. Was there anything else you wanted to kind of say to the fans of Space Station, or anybody out there you want to pull up?
No, I mean, we'll keep on doing what we're doing. I'll try and get as much streams and as much content out there as possible. But yeah, I mean, if you're supporting, thank you. If you're a hater, thank you as well. That's the way it has to be.
There it is. All right. Thank you very much, sir. And I will.
All right.
I'll see you everybody next time.